reminding us the things that we really want to build our life around. And a lot of them were, really simple things, like we have our health, and man, had a great mountain bike ride today. And it was an awesome crew in the sauna. Very few of them were around like, I made enough money to buy a fancy watch, or, they weren't ego-driven things. They were all just like soul-fulfilling things. And it was cool to be like, oh, okay, these are the people we need to continue surrounding ourselves with. These are the activities we want to be doing every day. These are the places where we want to be. So I would encourage people to start a gratitude jar, write those things, know that it's a great way to end your day, but know at the end of the year, it's going to be a reminder of how you want to design your life so that you're thriving day in and day out.
Today. I think we're going to do a great job. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Modern Man Podcast. As always, thank you for the time, and we promise not to take it for granted. Before we hop into the episode, our first question and our first ask is that you hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy the content that we're creating here, because we really, really want to share and grow this podcast even more so. The best compliment you can give us is by sharing this with a friend that you think can get value from it. And if you are a man looking for a community of other men elevating their capacity in life, we have a mastermind called The Noble Knights that I would love for you to be a part of. And you can definitely hit the link in the show notes for all those details. Here at Modern Man, we have a vision of connecting men in pursuit of their potential, and we do that by embracing discomfort, cultivating community, and putting wind in each other's sails. And I'm excited to get some wind in our sails today from our guest, Eric Hinman, CrossFit and Endurance Athlete, two-time Kona Ironman. I'm pretty sure I might have said that wrong, so you're going to correct me on that, but brand ambassador and co-founder, just all around from everything I've gathered. Great guy. Eric, thank you for being on the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me, Ted. How are you?
I'm doing well. Did I say that wrong? Kona Ironman in Hawaii?
Yeah, no, Kona is correct. Yeah, it's on the Big Island. Kona is the city that they host the Ironman in. I actually think they're moving it this year or next year, but for the last 25 plus years, the World Championships have been in Kona.
Yeah, and I know you've done more Ironmans than that. So right off the bat, I make sure that our guest, our audience, have a moment to get acquainted with each other. So I'd love to give you the floor really quick and kind of let you talk directly to the audience and introduce yourself in your own words, because I find that the guest always does a better job than I do.
Yeah. So, people now know me as an athlete, but I feel like I started as an athlete in my childhood, playing 3 sports in high school: basketball, cross country, and I ran track. And then in college, I got into weightlifting. And then for about 7 to 9 years, I was building businesses, a property and casualty insurance business, and then a software company. And I got pretty out of shape in my early 20s. And then I found Ironman in my late 20s. I started with a sprint distance triathlon and graduated to an Olympic distance, and then a half Ironman, and then a full Ironman, just wanting to see what my potential was. And yeah, became known as an Ironman athlete in the city that I grew up in, Syracuse, New York. And the last 5 to 10 years have been really helping others build their brands, and then also still training at a very high volume, but not so much for competition anymore, much more for mental well-being, physical well-being, emotional well-being. And I've really built my days around health and wellness protocols that, has allowed me to positively impact my life. And, through social media, I share those practices, hoping to impact others so, they can be the best version of themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love your routine. I saw that you posted it online, and I could tell it is really much focused on not just the fitness aspect, but very much intentionally focused on the recovery. And that's really huge, because we've said over and over here in Modern Man that for me, I personally believe that increasing our capacity in life is by embracing discomfort, by doing things that are hard. And I always say the word, show up, right? One of my mentors, Gregory Tony, he would always tell me, hey, show up. And I think a lot of us as men, sometimes we kind of go back in the shadows, or kind of like that Simpsons meme with Homer kind of going in the bushes when life gets hard. But I think, those are the moments that we're made when things get hard. What I'm interested so much is really the mentality that goes behind when you mentioned being out of shape to jumping to a triathlon. What does that process look like when you, I guess, look in the mirror, or you decide, I got to turn this thing around? That triathlon is a pretty high target where most people would be like, maybe I should try this couch to 5K thing, or start going to the gym once in a while.
Yeah. So, I mean, the overarching theme is compounding consistencies. So, Ironman is all about that. It's compounding consistencies and purposeful practice. So to get to that point, I think you need to build some mental grit around whatever it is you want to achieve. You need to understand that pretty much anyone that you aspire to be, they got there because they had tunnel vision, and, they understood the process and they executed on the process. And a lot of them also had mentors along the way that helped speed up the process some. So for me, I hired a personal trainer in my late 20s. That personal trainer helped me get into aesthetically good looking shape again, where, you could see my ab muscles and you could see definition in my arms and I look good. But I signed up for a 15K, the Utica Boilermaker, in like 2008. And it just absolutely wrecked me. And that was pretty eye-opening, because at that point, I was starting to look really fit again, but looking fit and being fit are, oftentimes two very different things. So I started running again, building up my run volume. And then I found this crew that was doing these Wednesday night triathlons in Jamesville, New York. And I really liked the bikes that my friends were getting. They had 4 handlebars. They looked really cool. They were really aerodynamic. They were called TT bikes. So I bought one of these TT bikes, and I'm like, well, I guess I got to sign up for a triathlon. So started doing these Wednesday night triathlons. And then I would, signed up for my first sprint distance triathlon in a race setting. And I almost drowned in the swim. I passed a bunch of people on the bike, passed more people on the run. And it was just really empowering. And it reminded me of business, where your results are directly correlated to how much purposeful practice you put in. So I kept showing up for these. Show up, definitely going to be a common thread in our conversation. I kept showing up for these Wednesday night triathlons. And I would win, after a year or so, these triathlons on Wednesday nights. Like, I was getting pretty good at the sport. But whenever I showed up for a local race, this guy, Mike Corona, would beat me in all of the races. And at that point, like, I looked way fitter than he did. I was defined. I had a 6-pack, and, he didn't look nearly as fit as me. And I'm like, why the hell is he beating me? I beat him every Wednesday. So I hired him as my coach, and he taught me a really, really valuable lesson, that there's a big difference between, exercise and training. There's a big difference between going through the motions and doing something with purpose. And he taught me how to, be an elite endurance athlete. And for me, it was slowing down and putting in more volume. So he forced me to do all of my running and biking at under a 140 heart rate. That allowed me to put in more volume, and that allowed me to really excel at the sport. I ended up beating him by hiring him, and then ultimately, getting to the Ironman World Championships in Kona twice, and the half Ironman World Championships 4 times. But it was really through, him as a mentor who understood the sport. He understood, the heart rate zones to be training at, like when to do your anaerobic workouts, when to do your aerobic workouts, how to structure your season, how to taper before a race, how to race a race, the nutrition. So, he was my mentor that really sped up the learning process to get to where I wanted to go faster than if I just kept banging my head into a wall doing what I was doing. maybe I would have gotten there on my own, but it would have taken a lot longer. And I probably would have gotten hurt because I was doing everything at too high of an intensity to get really good at endurance sports, because I was coming from more of a CrossFit type training background, strength training and like short explosive sprints, and everything I was doing was at a very high intensity. And that's why I would win these Wednesday night triathlons. But when the distance got longer, like I couldn't sustain that high of an effort for, 3+ hours. So yeah, I mean, super valuable lessons I learned in triathlon. Beyond Mike, it was, you really can accomplish anything if you backtrack your way into it. For me, it was just like daily execution. I had a plan. I thought like a bumblebee and trained like a racehorse, meaning, I had this positive attitude that I believed I could get to Kona, and, a racehorse just listens to its master. It just does what it's told. And it took, a good 6 to 8 months for me to listen to Mike and not like look at all these other plans and be like, well, that dude's really fit. Wonder what he's doing. Maybe I'll jump in on his workout. It was like, just trust your plan, execute every single day. The 10,000 hour rule. If you do that for 10,000 hours, you're going to be pretty goddamn good at anything.
No, I love that, man. And what I want to kind of extract from that for the listeners and the viewers is the reality of what you just said. Right off the bat, dropping the ego when you said, hey, this guy kept beating me. Yeah. So I hired him as a trainer. I think for most of us, especially the competitive types, you're like, he's going to beat me. I'm going to just focus on beating him. But to go to the person that's above you, to be humble enough to say, hey, man, how do you do it? Right? Like, hey, man, like, what's the sauce you have that I don't? Right? Because, hey, you probably put your pants on one leg at a time like I do. Yeah. We're not too much different. So what are the systems and processes that you put in place that makes you better than me? And I can admit that at this juncture, but through the work, through following the instructions, I could at some point, not necessarily just surpass you, but improve myself. And if that leads to surpassing you, then so be it. But at the very least, improving myself is the goal. I love that you said about the compounding consistencies and the commitment to the process, because so many of us do that. But like Mike Tyson says, it's everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I want to talk about Leadville 100 and how I wrote this question down because the question is going to be applicable to this race, but I think it's applicable to life, whether it's the business, whether it's this challenge that we face. And the question you had after crashing your bike, should I race? When the advice of the doctors was not to. Talk about that question, how that processed in your mind, and the decision to in fact race when you even might have felt unprepared, how important that decision was, because so many of us have the plan, we have the process, and then life gets hard and we choose not to race.
Yeah. So that was 10 days before Ironman Lake Placid. I can't remember if it was 2013 or 2014, but, I'm 4 years into the sport at this point. I'm really fit. And, I literally have been training 4 years to get like a top 3 finish at Ironman Lake Placid to punch my card to Kona. And I'm out on a routine training ride in Jamesville on a Puglia road. And it was a really, really hot, humid evening in July. And I was playing around with my bike computer because the wattage and heart rate were not working on it. And you're down in aero pads on your bike. And I had one arm off playing with my bike computer, and my arm slipped going about 25 miles per hour on my bike. And I went off into a ditch and just rolled and skidded. I thought I lost my chin. That was what I was most concerned about, because I literally slid on my chin. And, I get up and I'm like, all right, I don't think there's any broken bones, but, my chin feels like it's gone. I have road rash all over me. I have gashes on my fingers and my arms. And, so I end up going to the emergency room. It takes like 5 hours until I finally get into a doctor who, does a pretty poor job of washing out the wounds and then stitches everything up for me. And then while I was in the emergency room with the doctor, I was asking, like, do you think I'm going to be able to swim tomorrow? Do you think I'm going to be able to run tomorrow? What about biking? I have this Ironman in 10 days. I have to do it. I have to keep training leading up to it. And she's like, you're definitely not going to be able to swim. You're definitely not going to be able to run because you're going to sweat. And biking, like, you tell me you're going to bike indoors in a trainer. Maybe if you put a plastic bag on your hand, you will be able to, but I doubt you're going to be up to it. And she was kind of right. The next day I was, from the having stitches and just the shock of the crash, my nervous system was really off. But, 2 days after, I'm biking again with a plastic bag on my hand. I'm running again with a plastic bag on my hand. But swimming was an issue because I had this major gash on my finger. And you'll see to this day, I can't move my finger. Wow. And I ended up 3 days before Lake Placid. They took the stitches out, but I still had an open wound on my finger. And a couple doctors were like, don't do it. You're swimming in open water. Like, it could definitely get infected. And, I'm like, listen, I'm doing it. I'm so fit right now. Like, if, as long as the race director will let me buddy tape my fingers, because the pain was excruciating, putting any pressure on my hands. So I had to ask the race officials if I could just buddy tape my fingers to be able to swim. And they said I could. So I'm like, I'm doing it. I don't really care about the repercussions of my finger. Like, this has been a goal for the last 4 years that I've been training for. Like, I am racing. And, I ended up being able to get through the swim. On the bike, you're going upwards of close to 60 miles per hour on some of these descents in Lake Placid, tucked in this aero position. And it was raining that year. And I couldn't grip my handlebars. Like, all I had for grip was my thumb and this finger. Like, these fingers, I couldn't move them because my hand was still so swollen. So I'm literally gripping like this on my handlebars, descending at around 60 miles per hour in the rain. I ended up having a great race, qualifying for Kona. And then, pre-Kona, there was worry that I was going to lose my finger because it did end up getting infected. And, I didn't lose my finger, but to this day, I can't bend my finger from the knuckle down. But to me, it was worth that experience of getting to Kona, racing amongst the greats. And, I wouldn't have changed that decision for anything. So, yeah, it was just one of those things where, I had put in just so much work, like no one was going to tell me no.
Yeah. How did you feel at the beginning of the race, and how did you feel at the end?
Super nervous, anxious. If this hadn't happened, like, I was confident, like, barring nothing going wrong, like a crash or a flat tire, like, I was so confident that I was qualifying for Kona. I was just insanely fit at that point. And, because of that crash, though, like, I had no idea how the swim was going to feel because I didn't swim at all after the injury. So I'm like, how bad is the pain going to be pulling water with this hand? How is it going to be getting my wetsuit on and off? Because, like, any pressure, just like the lightest pressure on my finger at that time, excruciating pain. And then, like, how am I going to handle the bike, not being able to grip my handlebars, knowing the descents? But honestly, like, as soon as that cannon went off and I hit the water, the adrenaline trumped everything. And, like, I literally didn't think about it for, that 9 hours and 40 minutes of racing.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you probably had so much relief at the end. And I always related to
much
soccer,
yeah.
where, like, with soccer, where, you run the whole game and you don't realize how tired you are until you stop. And that happens for so many people. And not
flow
just
state, you're in the moment.
I love that. Yeah. Flow state, right? You don't pay attention to the pain in your legs or the pain in your hand because you're just going through that process. You're in the moment and probably enjoying yourself to some extent.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, there's suffering, but there's also, I think, euphoria in the hard work. And Eric, I looked at your routine, man. Your daily routine is impressive. And my wife and I remember we did 75 hard. Mm-hmm. And we crushed it. I remember reading our book at a football game. So I was like, what are you doing? A book report? I remember the 2 workouts a day, going for I was doing weighted vest jogs in the rain. My wife was coming on bike rides with me. And, like, we had this little bike trail near our house. And when we started we would get a certain distance so we'd go for 23 minutes and then come back. And it became a game, right? Because when we started 75 hard, we'd go, like, just a small distance. And I actually never measured it. and then we'd come back. By the time we were done with 75 hard, 75 days later, Eric, we were going almost, I want to say now this one I measured, it was almost like maybe 5-6 miles down the road and then coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how did we do that? Right. Like over the time I saw the improvement, and that became fun. That became enjoyable. Seeing your routine. The one question is, what do you do it for? Right. And I know, sure, the livelihood of being an athlete, but like with the intentionality behind it, not just the recovery, not just the workout, but also the community aspect too, I could see where with the dinner and the time with friends. So what do you do it all for?
Yeah, I mean, I figured out my perfect days, and I also have figured out like these tiny wins that make up a perfect day for me. And, it took years to figure that out. I definitely didn't always have that dialed in. There were years of my life where I certainly wasn't thriving, and I very much was, just working to play on the weekends. But, through those Ironman years, I became really mindful of what I wanted my life to be like, because I had so much time alone with all of that training and so much mental clarity. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the term runner's high, and I'm sure you've experienced it. With all of that exercise, there's a certain level of euphoria and focus that you get afterwards, and mental clarity from the high volume of exercise, that I was able to start realizing like, oh, okay, this is fueling the best version of myself. These are the people that are fueling the best version of me. These are the conversations I want to be having. These are the environments I want to be in. These are the activities and behaviors that I want to build my day around. So, it didn't happen overnight. It was really like a 5-year period of just tremendous awareness. And, my routine now is directly correlated and reflected in all of that awareness I had during those years. And, exercise is a huge component of that. And everything I do, I would do regardless of whether I was able to monetize it now. And then I was doing it before I was able to monetize it. I was living out my perfect days before I ever had a brand deal. So, it's strength training 5 days a week in a gym with really good people, with really loud music playing. I loosely follow Matt Fraser's HWPO. So strength training, anaerobic conditioning, accessory work, gymnastics. And, it's an obstacle. I like to think of a lot of these things as obstacles that when you overcome them, and when you overcome them with others, like there's this tremendous high afterwards. And then I always also structure cognitive tasks after workouts, recovery routines, because I know that is when I'm the best version of myself. That's when I have the most mental clarity. So, after that morning workout from 8:30 to 10:30, I typically schedule about a 90-minute block of time for cognitive tasks, whether it's creating content, doing podcasts with people, hosting my own podcast, talking to business partners, connecting people. That's a huge part of my day, is just connecting people that I think will benefit from knowing each other. I eat lunch, I enjoy what I eat, but so much of what I eat is also to fuel physical and mental performance. So, I'm cognizant of what I'm putting in my body, not from an aesthetic standpoint. I really think aesthetics are a byproduct of everything I do. Everything is more for like the mental performance and emotional well-being. And then every single day, 7 days a week, I do something outside at an aerobic zone 2 heart rate for 60 to 90 minutes. That's if I'm not specifically training for something. If I'm training for Ironman or some kind of endurance event, obviously that gets ramped up. But, just for general lifestyle purposes, I go off and mountain bike, trail run, ruck, pavement run, road bike, fat tire bike, cross-country ski, some kind of aerobic activity, again, outside, so I can combine it with getting in sunlight. I love being in nature. 7 days a week. After that, again, I schedule like another 60 to 90 minute cognitive session, which like we're doing our podcast right now at 2:30 my time. And then at 3 p.m., my sauna turns on. It's set to about 205 degrees. And around 4 p.m., a crew of people every single day kind of pours through our house, and the sauna is on for 3 hours. And there's people here doing contrast therapy with me. And that's a mixture of like friends, business partners, brands I work with, new people that reach out to me on social media. Whenever someone reaches out to me, that's what I propose. Come over, let's hit the sauna together. That's where we're going to have the best conversation. So yeah, there's always like 6 to 8 people that are rotating through here doing my contrast therapy routine, which is 3 rounds, 20 minutes in the sauna, 5 minutes in cold water in an ice barrel. After that, a lot of people generally stick around for dinner. I love cooking for people. So, I'll smoke something on our smoker, and then have like a 45-minute wind down routine in the evening where I try to learn something, just like watch YouTube, listen to a podcast, and then hit the hay with my girlfriend, Sarah, our dog Blaze, and get 8 hours of sleep, rinse and repeat, do it all over again.
That's what I'm talking about. And man, that's such a great routine, because one thing I love that you said there was, you did all this before you could ever monetize it. And like, I mean, that's the sauce, right? For what I do now, for anybody that's watching it, and they might know me from my morning gig, right? I don't say my day job. I wake up at 2 a.m. every day to do the morning news. But before I was hired as a meteorologist, I was working at a law firm as a billing clerk. I had a little flip camera. Remember back in the day where it was like a little USB camera? So I would do that, and I would go out and I literally would follow storms. I would follow all this weather, and I had a degree in it, but no one would hire me. So I just started my own company, and I did it for free for a year and a half before I got hired. And even the podcast, something I do for free before a dollar ever comes in. And I remember telling my wife the other day, like, everything I do today, I started off doing for free because it filled my cup. Now, I'm not telling people quit their job and do something for free, but obviously I'm working my day job and I'm growing this passion on the side. But what you just mentioned right there is something that I hope a lot of guys can get, because not only is it something that's fueling your soul, but I've heard the saying before, and some might believe it, some might not, but life is suffering, right? But why suffer alone? Right? Why suffer alone? Why go through the pain alone? So I imagine that those sauna conversations are probably a hoot. I imagine the ice barrel is probably a great time. You have a lot of jokes, a lot of laughter. It's funny because I have one on my balcony, and I remember when I first got the ice barrel, my wife's like, where the hell are we going to put this? We're in an apartment on the second floor. And I was like, there's just a bunch of problems to solve. Found the balcony, found the area. What's the weight load that the balcony can cover? 6,000 pounds. Oh, we're good. This thing's going to be about 750 pounds full. I had the little gallon jugs to fill it up. After that, I ended up buying an adapter for the hardware store for like $14. Connects to my sink. I have a hose that goes right to it. The hose on the bottom drains right off the second story. And I even got my wife to do it. And now she's going to be coming home soon in the next hour or so. And she was looking at me. She's like, oh, when I get home, because she's kind of sore, she's like, oh, we should do the sauna and then jump in the pool. And here in Charlotte, the pool is still like, last I checked, it was still like 42, 43 degrees. So she's like, let's go in the sauna, hot tub, and then hop in the pool. So she's doing the contrast therapy.
Love it.
Which is awesome to have a partner to do that with. But what you just said there, it definitely fuels the body. And I encourage a lot of people and a lot of guys that might be listening who might be out of whack with their routine to kind of find what fuels them and then find the community around it. And it sounds like that's been huge. And if ever I'm in Colorado, you're in Colorado, correct?
Yeah, just outside Denver.
All right, just outside Denver. If ever I'm in the neck of the woods, man, I might give you a call, see if I can stop by. I won't come empty-handed. I'll bring if you drink wine, I'll bring a bottle of wine, or I'll bring a big steak that we can cook or something. But I definitely would love to stop by.
Yeah, and that sauna routine, I mean, it's so much more than the physical aspects of it. There are obviously incredible physical benefits of the sauna, not only short term, but, long term, that we're learning from continued research studies of, decreasing all-cause mortality by up to 60%. I mean, some of these studies are insane. But for me, it's so much more about the feeling I get from it. And doing it alone, I feel amazing, where it just like de-stresses my nervous system, declutters my mind. And you have this incredible energy after it, very similar to like a post-run or post-workout high. Yeah. And then when you combined it with doing it with other people, it's similar to, doing a workout with other people, where afterwards there's this tremendous camaraderie where, you just went through something that was pretty hard together. And, you bonded in the sauna, having these deep, vulnerable conversations. There's something about the sauna that really, really fuels vulnerability and also mental clarity for you to just have these like really deep conversations with people. And, we all know that, deep conversations and meaningful relationships are so important for us to be happy in life.
Yeah. I love that you said that, because my next question was going to kind of like jump into data. And one thing I really enjoy about your content, because there's a lot of people who are doing things and whatnot, and I'm guilty of this myself. I would just go through the motions, man. Like I would just go to the gym, pick something up that's heavy. I wouldn't track anything. I wouldn't really do research. And what I found in life as I'm getting older is there are levels to things, right? Where when I started biking with my wife, we had the little bikes that, okay, $126 from Toys R Us or whatnot. That's great. Cool little mountain bike. But then I'm going to the bike store. It's like, why is this? It's so much more money. And it's like, well, the shocks and the material of the bike. But not only that, what you mentioned, and just following your socials, your posts with the blood work that you've been doing, the research. Was it Get Blokes doing the blood work with you guys?
Yep.
The research and getting the data. It's so huge, because I mean the proof is in the pudding, and the numbers tell the story. Being someone who never thought I had anxiety, I got a Whoop band. I found out that I had a very high resting heart rate. Okay, was it fast metabolism, or maybe I'm holding on to internal stress and I'm carrying it differently, right? And maybe that's shaving some years off my life and I'm not even aware of it. So once I wore the Whoop band, I started getting the speedometer to my life. I'm seeing my sleep is crap, right? I'm seeing, okay, my training might be good, but it's not that effective. And when I started honing in on these numbers, when I started doing the cold water therapy, breath work, sauna, my wife even mentioned something not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago. She's like, you seem more balanced, kind of like with my emotions being regulated, handling challenges a little better. And I haven't done that research to say, this is why. But for me, kind of like what you mentioned before, this helps fuel me. When I wake up in the morning, I come home from an 8-hour shift. I get home 11:30, 12 o'clock every day. My routine is breath work, journal, reflection. I'll shower really quick, hop in the cold plunge in the ice barrel. I'll sit there for 3 to 5 minutes. And then I'll wait a little bit. I'll just sometimes do a workout. I like to cold plunge before my workout, because I know that if I do it right after my workout, I might kind of undo the gains from that. I don't know if that's the best practice, but that's kind of how I kind of landed after some of my research. But talk about the importance of the data. And when you talked about the compounding consistencies and the process and the plans, a lot of us ignore the numbers and we just go through the motions, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, going back to the triathlon years, I was exercising at a high level and I thought I was doing everything right because I was doing the appropriate movements, but I wasn't doing them at the appropriate intensity or duration. So, that was a really eye-opening moment for me of, again, there's a big difference between going through the motions and, doing something with purposeful practice. And, this kind of goes back to the mentor thing. You're always going to get to where you want to go faster if you can follow in someone's foot tracks who has already achieved what you want to achieve. So if you want to build $100 million company, find someone who's built $100 million company and, buddy up with them and, obviously try to bring them value so they'll share their wisdom and value with you. But it's likely that they figured out things along the way that are gonna help fast track you to get there. And again, these things are all just like daily execution and understanding why you're doing what you're doing. Is it getting you closer to where you want to go on an incremental basis? And the data plays an important aspect in that. We'll talk the athletic side of it. Like for me, I was running at about a 830 pace at a 140 heart rate in 2010. But I was doing a lot of my runs in the 6:30 to 7-minute range, but it was at almost a max heart rate. So I could only do that for, upwards of 5 to 6 miles. And then it was just too high of an intensity for me to continue. So by backing off on the intensity, it allowed me to increase the duration of my runs and also increase the frequency of my runs. And fast forward 4 years to 2015. 14, I could run 20 plus miles at a 6:30 pace at a 129 heart rate. And it was all from the purposeful practice. I could have continued running the same way I was running, fast, burning calories, probably would have looked very similar, but the underlying performance was vastly different in following, the correct protocol to get me to where I wanted to go, compared to not following the correct protocol. And that's true with everything in life. Building a business, like two people could both work 8-hour days, 5 days a week, and one person is going to come out way further ahead because they're following a certain protocol and they're maximizing their time, and they figured out how to maximize purpose to get them to where they want to go. And then as far as like the Whoop data, all of that stuff, like I think it's incredible data to understand. Blood work is incredible. I mean, so many of us have no idea what is going on under our hood. And, we're supplementing with all of these things because it's marketed to us. We're, told all these different diets work, and we have no idea if it's the right one for us. We're so bio-individual. So I do think blood work is so important. So like you can actually understand what you're deficient in, and you may not need all the supplements you're taking. It may be that you're not getting enough sleep. That's screwing up your testosterone. You're not lifting heavy weights. You're only doing, cardio on a treadmill. That could screw up your testosterone. So, I think it's a great place to start to get your blood work so you understand how to fix various things that are going on internally with your hormones. And then, like Whoop data, your HRV, your resting heart rate. I think all of that is super important sleep is super important to understand, how many hours of sleep are you getting? How much deep sleep are you getting? And, I think ultimately how many steps you're taking per day. I think ultimately all of these things just make us aware and mindful of doing things that are going to increase our lifespan and health span, doing things that are going to make us the best version of ourselves. So I love the data in that sense, but also I think it's easy too to get caught up with comparison, to get caught up with, the data, and sometimes forget about feeling-based evidence. Like we're all our own scientist, and so much of the things I do were just from self-experimentation. My sauna and cold plunge routine kind of came from self-experimentation of like, this works really well for me. My exercise mix works really well for me. The people I train with, I enjoy being around that. Like it was all self-experimentation. It wasn't someone really dictating a lot of those things. So, I think, you are your own scientist, and it's important to see what works for you and having the data to, back it up and understand why it's working for you.
Absolutely. And I love that, taking the responsibility for what's under our hood, because a really good friend of mine, Dr. Raymond Nichols, he had this whole mantra, and he still has, and I love it. He's, your health is your responsibility. And we have a whole bunch of physicians, a whole bunch of experts, and a whole bunch of trainers, and a whole bunch of other avenues to help us and aid us in that. But at the end of the day, it's our responsibility to take care of ourselves. And when it comes to data, the way I see it, I always compare it to the car. We always compare our bodies. Oh, this is a great vehicle, but we also have a speedometer. We also have a check engine light. We have the tire pressure sensors, right? If our car is that Corvette, our car is that Ferrari, yeah, we might know we're driving fast, but the speedometer tells us how fast, right? We might feel like the tire's a little low, but our tire pressure sensor tells us how low. And that's what I found for the Whoop. And that's what I'm excited to get into blood work. I actually was doing research on some offices to do blood work to get my testosterone levels, because as I'm learning this, as I'm getting through the process, it's like the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. And it's such a beautiful thing, because it's an excitement, right? There's so much out there. And as we're coming towards the back end, I would love to maybe see if we could give some practical steps for some of our listeners, and maybe increasing their cardiovascular health, maybe increasing their endurance or whatnot. Because yesterday I wrote up a leg workout for me and my friends about a month or so ago, and we've been doing it. And I guess the reputation of the workout is, quite frankly, it sucks, which I like, I feel good about. And let me pull it up really quick from the data that we did. I think my max heart rate was 181, 839 calories. And it was over the course of an hour and 20 minutes. But it starts and ends with a run. And it's a short run. It's only like a quarter mile. My heart rate spikes when I run. I'm not good at running. I'm going to say this on the podcast, and I hope I don't regret it. I want to run more. It's been itching in the back of my head. You know, like I said, I look at other people, they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like me. I remember the last time I ran and actually timed my mile, Eric, all out, it was 7 minutes. And I love it when people say it's not a marathon, it's a sprint. I'm like, I mean, these marathon runners are running like 6-minute miles. Like that sounds like a sprint to me. So let's say someone's like me, and whether, let's say, starting with the 5K or honestly a half marathon, right? Let's say I want to run 13 miles. What would you recommend for somebody like me who wants to maybe start that process over the maybe 5-6 months of increasing my capacity and my endurance to run that far?
Yeah. So running is very sport specific. I mean, you're obviously a very, very fit person. The way to get better at running is running a lot, and frequency and consistency are really the equations to build, an aerobic engine and build the durability necessary to get your heart rate down in running. So my recommendation is starting off at a zone 2 heart rate. So monitoring your heart rate, running it depending on your max heart rate. My max heart rate is around 175. I typically am doing my runs around a 130 to 140 heart rate. That's my zone 2. You having a max heart rate closer to 190, you might be closer to a 145 to 150 heart rate for your zone 2. And then, starting with a mile and running it at that heart rate, and it's going to be slow. You might be at a 14-minute mile. You have to check your ego with this stuff, but by doing it frequently, you over time will be able to get your heart rate down and run further and run faster. So my recommendation is, if you've never run before, starting with a half mile, a mile, maybe every other day if you're sore from that run. And then as you're able to build the run durability, running upwards of 5 to 6 times per week. But again, not at a high intensity. All of these runs should be at a zone 2 heart rate, and, steadily building volume, just like you would steadily build weight to back squat more, bench press more. So, if you're running 1 mile day 1, 2 miles day 3, 3 miles day 5, maybe the next week you up each of those by a half mile, and just continually, keep doing that until you can run 5 to 6 days per week, and until you can run upwards of, 10 miles in one session. If you want to do a half marathon, that may take you 4 or 5 months to get there. Again, like my journey has been 14 years in the making of habit stacking. So, for someone to compare themselves to me, if they're just getting started, like my routine is going to be, way far reaching for someone because they're 14 years behind. I started somewhere too. I also was like you, where, I wasn't that into running after my college party days and my first business of sitting in a car 50,000 miles a year. And I do like picking exercise as the first component of the food pyramid. I think that that gave me the most bang for my buck, like getting exercise down, getting that structured into your routine is likely going to lead to, more positive eating behaviors, better sleep, and then, a more positive outlook on life, probably a different friend group, different activities that you're going to be interested in doing. So that was the top of the food pyramid for me, was getting exercise dialed in. And, that was a several year period of having a personal trainer to get to a point where I didn't need the accountability anymore. I didn't need the motivation. information. I didn't need to pay someone to enlighten me on how I should train, and then the year after that, I focused on various diets, what worked for me. And then the year after that, I figured out how to get, 8 hours of sleep every single night. And the year after that, I figured out my contrast therapy routine. And like, it was just like year after year of picking one thing to conquer. And again, I think that's important for people to realize if they are looking up to someone on social media and see them living a certain life and their routine, like that person likely has, 10,000 hours to get to where they are. And you need to figure out like where they started and where you want to start, and know that it's a journey. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon to get to where you want to go with this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I love one of the best advice my friend gave me. He said, Ted, it's a process. It's a process, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. But if you stick to the process, you will get there. What has these past 14 years, what has this journey? Because I love books, because I do believe there have been so many people on this earth. And when someone takes the time to put their experience in a book, they obviously feel like it's worth sharing. And because of that, I think it's worth consuming if their experience is relative to the journey that you're on. So I'm interested to know, what lesson have these past 15 years? And I know life is still going, right? There's still more lessons to learn, but reflecting on these, like you mentioned, these past 14 years, as you did the habit stacking, as you've built yourself into the Eric you are today, what's a lesson that you can maybe give to some of our viewers who might be on their chapter 2, 3, 4, or still working on their stacking, that can maybe help them a little bit along the way?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that helped me the most was writing out those tiny wins that I have, like understanding how I wanted to structure my day, so that I just was super present with everything I was doing, super present with the people I was around, super present with the environment I was in, and, never wishing I was somewhere else, never wishing I was doing something else, never wishing I was with someone else. And again, this took a while to like really dial this in, but yeah, I've really gotten to a point where, my days are very structured around those tiny wins. And, there is variety within it though. It's different people coming in and out. It's different places where I'm playing outside, and it's different workouts every day, but the structure remains the same, because I've figured out that, that has allowed me to thrive and be the best version of myself, and also attract opportunities into my life. A really cool thing that we did, this is a cool action item, in addition to like starting to write out your tiny wins, and also write out like the people, places, activities that bring you negative energy, where you wish you were somewhere else, you wish you were with someone else, you wish you were doing something else. Like, write those out too. There was a period of my life where I was doing things where I just thought I was going through the motions, and I wrote those things out, or I wrote those conversations out where I didn't feel like they were deep conversations, and I wasn't getting any value, and I wasn't giving any value. And I also wrote out like environments, like, being out late at night in bars where I'm just like, why the hell am I here? This sucks, and I excluded that from my life. The other thing that we did at the beginning of 2022, and we just read it at the beginning of this year, we have a gratitude jar that we keep on our kitchen counter. And Sarah and I, most nights, I mean, it's not every night, but many nights, we write down, things we were grateful for throughout the day. And then our friends also write things in it. And, it's a really cool way to end your day, of just kind of reflecting on, what made it a great day. But reading that at the end of the year was super powerful in reminding us the things that we really want to build our life around. And a lot of them were, really simple things, like we have our health, and man, had a great mountain bike ride today, and it was an awesome crew in the sauna. Very few of them were around like, I made enough money to buy a fancy watch, or, they weren't ego-driven things. They were all just like soul-fulfilling things. And it was cool to be like, oh, okay, these are the people we need to continue surrounding ourselves with. These are the activities we want to be doing every day. These are the places where we want to be. So I would encourage people to start a gratitude jar, write those things, know that it's a great way to end your day, but know at the end of the year, it's going to be a reminder of how you want to design your life so that you're thriving day in and day out.
Yeah, I love that because it goes back to the data, right?
Yeah.
We can get the data in the one aspect, sure, of our levels, our heart rate, our blood work, but also the energy that we feel day in and day out. And I used to mention this in terms of a comparison to an ATM, where there are some relationships we have where they're just withdrawals. There's other relationships we have that are deposits. And if we're always just honing in on these relationships that are withdrawals, eventually we're going to run empty. And when we run empty, we end up being resentful towards those people that withdraw from us, really to no fault of their own, because we haven't audited where our energy gets replenished and where it gets drained. We haven't paid attention to that. And that gratitude jar, I love that, because I actually still have it here. In 2021, when I got married to my wife, I would write down in the journal every day, like, I'm thankful for, and something about her. And she caught me writing one day. She's like, what are you writing? And I was like, just like, I'm not thankful for you book. And to your point, there were little things like just a hug she gave me before leaving that day, which made me feel a little better. You get an inkling on what it is that actually matters. And when you sit down and do it. And I can keep going on and ask more questions, but I do want to be respectful of your time and our listeners' time. So before I ask my last question, Eric, I want to make sure that folks can find you on social media, can follow some of the amazing content that you're sharing, because I really do think you are helping people with your journey, right? You say, hey, this is what works for me. If it just plants a seed in someone's head to maybe go on their own journey and maybe explore their own bodies, what works for them, I really think it could help someone out. So I would love for them to have a way to connect with you, follow you, and maybe even stop by for one of your saunas and contrast
Yeah, definitely.
therapies.
If you're in Denver, swing by. Instagram is the best place. It's just my name, Eric Hinman. I'm on TikTok as well, YouTube, erichinman.com. But Instagram is the best place. And yeah, if you guys have any questions about this stuff, I love talking about it. So DM me. I answer all of my DMs on Instagram, and happy to help anyone with their journey, especially when it comes to self and wellness protocols.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have that link. I'll have those links in the show notes too. So anybody can open up the app that they're listening to, or go down in the show notes if you're watching on YouTube, and you can get directed right to the sources right there. Eric, my last question, it's a heavy one, which is why I save it for the end, and you could take a little time to answer it authentically. But I always ask, what is something you've seen or something that's happened in your life that shapes the way you view the world as a man?
Something that I've seen that shapes the way I view the world as a man. Well, I think going back to our earlier conversation before we jumped on the suicide rate for men being 70% of suicides are males. That's a staggering number. And, I think it's important for us to deeply connect with people and understand that everyone is dealing with something, and everyone, in some way is hurting, and they've hopefully figured out ways to deal with that hurt. So, for me, a huge part of my exercise routine, a huge part of my, self-care routine, the sauna, the cold exposure, is for mental and emotional well-being, to, de-stress my nervous system, to make sure that I'm not anxious, to make sure that, I have these progress associated behaviors built into my life every day, because that makes me happy. So I think it's important for us as men to communicate with each other and not be afraid to ask hard questions, knowing that there's likely people out there that have gone through what you're going through, and someone can probably, lend advice on how they've been able to get through it that hopefully you can apply to your life.
I love that, man. Eric, thank you so much. This has been a phenomenal episode, and I appreciate you taking the time and sharing authentically with us throughout this the past 50 minutes that we've been chatting.
You bet. This was a great convo, Ted. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. My pleasure. And I'm just going to wrap things up really quick because I know a lot of folks probably listen while they're driving, cleaning, or maybe on a bike ride themselves or going for a run. Keep on going, just a few more miles. We believe in you. But I wrote down some of the gems along the way. One, compounding consistencies and building mental grit. A lot of us can set an audacious goal, but if we don't commit ourselves to the process, we're probably going to set ourselves up for failure, especially if we haven't put the plan into place. Putting aside our ego and looking at someone who might be better than us and find out what they can teach us, not necessarily just put a target on their back and try and take them out. Exercise versus training. How many of us are going through the motions, but not taking the intentional steps towards that goal? And I'm doing it. When the question is, should I race? If you've worked so hard towards an outcome, if you've worked so hard towards a goal and an obstacle shows up right near the finish line, are you going to let that stop you? Hopefully you'll answer just like Eric and say, yeah, what'd you say? No one was going to tell me no. That is what you have to tap into. And then feeling the best version of myself. I love that. A lot of us have this connection to growth, and a lot of us are probably mostly looking for what gives us fulfillment. And I encourage you to pay attention to that. Audit your energy, audit your surroundings and your community, and find out what's draining you and what's filling you up, and find out why you're doing what you're doing. Look under the hood. Lean into data, find out what your sleep looks like, your blood levels, find out what your sugar levels, your insulin, find out what is going under the hood, because that might help give you the answers as to why you can't sleep at night. It might give you the answers as to why you have this ache in your shoulder that you just can't get rid of. And it's going to play wonders moving in the future. And then frequency and consistency, check your ego, habit stacking. It's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. You could look at examples like Eric and others on social media. That might be their chapter 20. Don't compare it to your chapter 1. Stick to the process. Take it one step at a time. And I know, and I can promise that there will be growth and there will be progress. Guys, thank you so much for rocking with us all the way to the end. Eric, thank you again. And as we always say, if you got value from this, please share this with a friend. Leave us a rating to let us know how we're doing. The only way to improve is by you telling us where you would like us to improve. And of course, hit subscribe so you can get a new episode each and every single week. We appreciate you guys. And as we always say at the end of the episode, everybody wants the sunshine, but they don't want the rain. But you can't get the pleasure without first the pain. Let's grow. Let's hit pass it today. I think we're gonna do a great job.